Ferdinand Porsche's technical vocabulary embraced tugs and tractors that he built at Austro-Daimler during World War I. Although intended to pull field kitchens, artillery and ammunition, his machines also had potential for agricultural service in peacetime. Indeed, many of Porsche's military creations were put to just those uses when peace broke out. After he established his own design office in Stuttgart in 1930, Porsche concentrated on the products for which he saw the greatest potential, and that of course was passenger cars and racing cars. So hello everybody, you're very welcome back to the channel. So after a little bit of a break, I've been away on holidays, I'm back with a bang, a big history lesson on Porsche tractors. Now this is one that I knew very, very little bit. I knew a fair bit about Ferdinand Porsche himself, obviously Porsche cars, and Ferdinand Porsche's involvement with the Nazi Party down through the 1930s and 1940s during World War II and that rise of Nazism, and the part that he played in it, that he really was a right-hand man for Adolf Hitler in regard the motor end of things. Of course, the famous Volkswagen Beetle and Porsche cars and the people's car that they called it. Anyway, we're here today, we're going to talk about the tractors. That's what we love talking about in this channel. We're not getting too deep into cars, but I will speak a little bit about the cars, the car end of it, and about Ferdinand Porsche himself. So yeah, this is something that it's a topic, Porsche tractors. I knew very, very little about them. I knew they existed, never driven one. I don't know if I've even ever seen one. So yeah, I learned a lot researching on Porsche tractors, and there is 17 pages of research going into this, so it is quite a substantial video. So yeah, without further ado, I'm going to get into it. I'm going to start off on the history. So, you know, if you have 25-30 minutes to spare, sit back, get yourself a coffee, listen in the car, watch at home with your feet up if you want. I'm going to try and throw in as many decent pictures as I can. Okay. So soon afterwards, he and his team were fully engaged with the Grand Prix auto unions and the massive task of creating the Volkswagen car and factory. But when Porsche and Adolf Hitler met, the discussions often touched on Germany's need for tractors to accelerate the work of its farmers, not only at home, but also in the conquered territories that will comprise the future Greater Germany. When in 1937 commenced, the outlook for a tractor project improved. At the 3 Porsche office floors in the 7th-story Ulmsbau of Konradstrasse 24 in Stuttgart, the last major work of esteemed architect Philipp Jakob Manz. Now, please bear with me as I read through this. There are a lot of very intricate German words in it, place names and such. So please, if I don't get to, if you are German or if you're fluent in German or you understand German, please don't kick me too hard for my pronunciation of the German language. His auto union contract having expired, Porsche renewed his relationship of the 1920s with Daimler-Benz. The main design work finished on the VW, his team had time to address the tractor, and Porsche set out his vision as follows. Inexpensive to buy and maintain, suitable for large-scale manufacture, adequate performance for all work concerning farming and agriculture, robust and simple to operate. This was his clarion call for a true Volkstraktor or a Volkstraktor, so the people's tractor. So looking at the development then, so on November the 24th, 1937, Porsche's chief engineer, Karl Raab, issued the first document on a tractor project, giving it the type number 110, so 110. His engineers studied various aspects of the job, including its materials needs. On the 2nd of June 1938, a week after the cornerstone laying ceremony at the VW factory, Raab set out his activity plan for building 3 prototypes, the standard Porsche number. The first was to be ready on September the 3rd, 1938, Porsche's 63rd birthday, and the other 2 were to be 10 days later. Though the birthday may have been missed, just one of the type 110 tractors was ready before the year's end, and another in 1939. These were virtual breadboard studies with a new air-cooled V-twin engine and the driver seated in front. So air-cooled V-twin, very, very similar to, I suppose, the flat 4 engine, that flat 4 engine that you'd find in the Volkswagen Beetle. So they would have shared a lot of similarities. 3 more prototypes in 1939 seated the driver more conventionally to the rear using the same engine. This left space in front for a boxed cargo platform. Carrying a load in the cargo area was important for the tractor's stability under power, suppressing dangerous nose lifting. Boulders were used for this for when ploughing, example. When the Allied military came to inspect these tractors after the war, they asked the resident Porsche man at VW, Josef Kalles, why had the rocks used in the cargo platform? And he says, well, it was actually cheaper than iron. And at the time, I suppose iron was at a premium during the war. So Karl Raab's project list indicate that Porsche's work on this tractor and its refinement were financed by the Volkswagen project budget. Because this didn't extend to building a factory, Robert Ley put his strength through joy, labour organisation forward as he had for the VW work. So strength through joy was the motto that went towards the building of the tractor. So very, very similar to Volkswagen, which is Vorsprung durch Technik, so advancement through technology. And here with the tractors, we had strength through joy. So land was acquired at Waldbrog, east of Cologne, and Bonn, where Ley was a Gauleiter, the local authority. Austrian architect Peter Koller, designer of the town of Wolfsburg, prepared a plan for 4 huge production halls. Though planning continued until the effort was abandoned in 1944, not a spadeful was turned to begin construction. Ironically, just as the Waldbrand dream was dying, the Porsche team were putting more hours into a much improved tractor. Against all the constraints on improvements, the vehicles that were not decisive for the war effort, said Ferry Porsche and Albert Preisling, Porsche encouraged this child, which was dear to him, all the more because he was compelled to deal with military vehicles. How was Porsche managing to keep the now Type 113 project alive? Well, his team developed a relationship with the OM Works of Brescia in Italy, a renowned truck maker. Although much was lost in the end of the war, at the collapse, several examples of the 113 survived on the Porsche family estate at Zell am See in Austria. Some were powered by wood-fed gas generator units into their noses. During the last year of the war, the Porsche people told Tore Franzen, Chrysler engineer who was investigating for the Allies, a considerable quantity of Porsche's development capacity had been devoted to this vehicle. This was the result of June 1944 order from a standard Führer Hoffmann for 50 of these tractor-type vehicles suitable for the transportation of 4 people to be available with wheel or track drive and propelled by gasoline or generator gas. For this, Porsche created his Type 293. That was an adaptation of the 113, which was to have been built by OM. Although the war ended before even one 293 was built, this was additional tractor experience for the Porsche team. The Type 113 post-war survivor, Tore Franzen reported, is claimed by the professor to have good performance and to incorporate all-power takeoffs, drawbar arrangements, etc., requirement by modern agricultural practice. On a wheelbase of only 55.1 inches with a 49.2-inch track, the Type 113 was a spunky-looking number, now with a fully enclosed power unit. And that's his words, not mine. Engine, gearbox and drive axle were unified in a compact package at the driver's feet, with a 5-speed transmission overhung behind the differential, as in the Auto Union racing car. Novel was a hydraulic coupling between the engine and clutch that allowed the tractor to be started and driven in any gear and helped the engine keep running when any blockage occurred. The powered unit was an inline, air-cooled twin, producing a concept that was to prevail in future Porsche tractors. Features were a single head covering both cylinders, 3 main bearings, pushrod and rocker valve gear, and a Scirocco cooling fan that ran at 4,900 RPM when the engine was at its power peak at 2,000 RPM. Output was 15 horsepower from the 1.7cc engine, giving a top speed of 10 miles per hour. Its 5-speed transmission had a super low ratio for the likes of harrowing and ploughing and stuff like that. A gear pump in the engine sump powered a built-in hydraulic system that operated lifting arms for mowers and cultivators and other equipment. The large frame tube extended forward from the power package at the front, suspension and the steering. Powertrain housings had been built of both iron and aluminium. In the latter instance, the curb weight was 2,425 pounds. Here was a well thought out ideal for the smaller landholder, suitable either for gasoline or gas generator operation. It was finally the Volkstraktor Ferdinand Porsche had no hope of winning Austrian interest in at all. All the factories of the Steyr-Daimler Puch Group were in the Russian zone of occupation, and the Soviets had taken 5,000 of the company's 15,000 machine tools as reparations after the war. So in 1945, Porsche turned to a company in Germany that he knew very well, and that was ZF, and I'm not even going to try and pronounce what ZF is, which produced many components for vehicles, but not yet completed ones. The highly esteemed company sent a man to Zell and Seam in August 1945 to assess the Type 113. He totted up 25 suggestions, albeit chiefly to do with the gas generator. ZF would not be a tractor building candidate. Contract signed with Italia of Italy required, among racing and sports cars, a mini tractor with a 43.3-inch wheelbase and a single-cylinder diesel engine of 895cc, giving 11 horsepower. Intended for vineyard workers and mountain farms, it required special drives for mowing and cable reel. Planned for production by Italian agricultural equipment makers Poggi, this Type 323 tractor went west when Italia went south. Between 1945 and 1948, the Porsche engineers marooned at Gund designed and built yet another two-tractor iteration. This came in two flavours, the gasoline fuel Type 312 and the diesel engine Type 313. While the 312 was generally on Type 113 lines with its transaxle overhung at the rear, the 313 adopted a more conventional layout with its transmission between the engine and final drive. In spite of its small size, this had in fact been proposed for the Italian mini tractor. The new chassis of the 313 had better proportions with a 59.1-inch wheelbase and 57.1-inch track. The latter was adjustable to suit farming conditions, down to a minimum of 49.2 inches. A prototype of this tractor family performed superbly well as far away as Brazil, where Porsche man Emil Rubeles worked with the government's interest in an effort to launch production. Dreams of 12,000 being built yearly turned out to be just that. In tests of the Porsche design against its rivals, they never failed to come out ahead. Who would capitalise on this decade-long design and testing effort? The man who had seized the opportunity was known for his enthusiasm for new ideas and new projects. This was Erwin Allgaier of the George Allgaier Presswork, which he had headed since 1939. His family company specialised in the supply and pressings, press tools and other devices. At its works southeast of Stuttgart, it had been making a small water-cooled tractor from the pen of Paul Stockhacker since 1946. Agricultural technician Wilhelm Grommel, who had good contracts with both Porsche and Allgaier, may have helped bring the companies together, but Erwin Allgaier had been in contact with the Porsche design teams since the 1930s. I knew Porsche when it still had a design office in the Kornerstrasse in Stuttgart, he related. We also pressed parts for them when in our factory during the war. When I saw the Volkstraktor after the war, I said, that's just a little tractor for me. Starting while much of the Porsche staff was still in Gund, when the Allgaier's engineers worked jointly with design of the first Porsche system Allgaier tractor. To begin work, the Allgaier team drew up an 11-page list of suggested changes to be made in the series-built tractor. Many posed as questions rather than demands. This provided a basis for a discussion at Gund in October in 1949, in which the customer was represented by Erwin Allgaier and engineers Fritz Brauer and Robert Mack. Karl Rabe led the conversation on the Porsche side. The minutes recorded for this meeting served as the basis for creating the factory drawings. A subsequent internal Porsche memo warned, please do not leave any drawings lying exposed after office hours, and covered drafting boards. Deadlines for various engine drawings is 15th of December 1949. In December, the contract between the two companies was finalised and executed. Liaison engineer on the project was Porsche's Leopold Schmidt, who would spend some time at Allgaier with the Allgaier engineers, detailed the front suspension, steering, transmission, final drive, driver seat, fenders and toolbox. Around the time of designation system was settled, it included AP for the two participants, followed by a horsepower number, already an Allgaier tradition. They based the horsepower on results already obtained on the engine of the Type 313. For this was to be diesel tractor. Its output was 17 horsepower, so the tractor became the AP17. In the end, the engine actually developed a whopping 18 horsepower, but the designation was left unchanged. To reduce cost, the Porsche engineer specified many parts of die-cast aluminium using a strong, high silicon alloy. This necessitated recruitment of suppliers with this capability. They had to be able to cast the parts in such a way that further machining was unnecessary or only trivial. A pre-series of 10 tractors was decided upon, made from parts that conformed entirely to those that would be mass-produced. Early in 1950 trials commenced to weed out problems and set the final specifications. And while I'm on it, if anyone has any history with Porsche tractors, which I doubt there are too many of you out there, if anyone knows anything more about them, if you have any history whatsoever with Porsche tractors, please drop a comment. If you're from Germany, if you're from Brazil, because there are a few of them floating around Brazil, for whatever reason, I don't know. It's nothing got to do with the fact that maybe South America was flooded with Nazis after the war. It was a haven for Nazis. So yeah, it seems like a sensible place that they would have tried to set up business, because they had the likes of Mengele, the Mengele Agricultural Company, whose son, obviously Joseph Mengele, aka Dr. Death, he was harboured out there. He was doing business selling agricultural equipment. So there was a pool of the Nazis held up in South Africa, trying to, I suppose, make a life for themselves and hide after the war. So on June the 9th, 1950, Ferdinand and Ferry Porsche were on deck when the all-new Porsche design Allgaier AP17 tractor was presented to the press at Frankfurt's Hotel Frankfurt Hof. The price was announced, which had blockbuster impact at a reasonable 4,450 Deutschmarks, so roughly 930 US dollars, or 10,000, roughly 10,000 in, say, 2020 dollars. By the third day of the exhibition, some 15,000 orders had been booked. The first AP17 left the factory on July the 10th, 1950, followed by completion of the 500 AP17 tractor on October the 13th. The end of the year saw 1,550 completed. In 1951, almost 5,000 had been put into service. The AP17 offered many novel yet well-tried features. Integrated into its cast aluminium structure was its air-cooled two-cylinder diesel engine with Bosch oil injection and individual cylinder heads. Another feature, which was a gear-driven centrifugal oil filter. Its displacement was 1,374 cc, delivering 18 horsepower at 2,000 RPM. The engine drove a 5-speed transmission with a hydraulic pump to power accessories. Between the engine and clutch was distinctive fluid coupling that avoided stalling and allowed starting in any gear ratio. A distinctive touch was its dashboard, which, with all electrical controls and fuses, was attached to the steering column. So that fluid coupling between the engine and the gearbox, so that's what we would recognize today, I suppose, as a torque converter. So it basically uses a fluid transfer system to transfer the motion from the engine to the gearbox. And it's a nice, smooth, gradual take-up. Anyone that's driven an automatic car with a torque converter will understand that it is a nice, smooth delivery of power. Although it wouldn't take much horsepower to get them, overheated, and there was limitations around the amount of horsepower you could put through them. Obviously, modern machines now are completely different. So looking at the A111 Junior, so for its new tractor, Allgaier invested in a new factory. It found a suitable property in the Friedrichshafen enclave of Mansell, where airplane builder Dornier had a surplus works canteen. The L-shaped building needed clearing out and installation of separate assembly lines for vehicles and engines, much as Porsche's Type 356 production was evolving. A credit line of several million Deutschmarks from the Baden-Württemberg state suited the financial pain of transformation. Porsche and Allgaier cooperated closely in the early 1950s to offer a tractor range that was as profitable as it was innovative. An important aim was to create engines of 2, 3 and 4 cylinders that shared as many components as possible. Introduced in 1952, the 3-cylinder Type A1333 was an important step in this process. Resulting from decisions made in weekly design meetings in which Porsche's Leopold Schmidt and Wolfgang Ibe were active. The A133 used major components from the AP17, such as transmission's gearing, which was outsourced. Shared with the Allgaier twin-cylinder tractor were all the engine's reciprocating parts, giving it swept volume of 2061 cc and 33 horsepower at 2000 RPM. New features of the A133 included a frontal power takeoff and a sprung front axle adjustable for height. Successfully proven, the hydraulic coupling in the driveline was kept to provide operating flexibility. Special care was needed in the design of the new hood, a complex injection moulding giving a typical lively grille-free appearance in the air-cooled Allgaier Porsche tractor that was thought to be styled by Porsche's Erwin Kommanda. Production of the A113 began in September in 1952. In all, some 4,000 of its 3-cylinder models were made through mid-1956, including a follow-on version designated the P133. The A133 had a gasoline version, the A132, which had a single-cylinder head serving both of its cylinders. This was the basis for the most striking and unusual of the AP tractors, called the P132, and this had a fully enclosed bodywork. Nicknamed the Brazilian, the P132 was the result of contacts that began in 1948 when engineer Emil Ruppelius took a Type 312 to Sao Paulo in search of a company to manufacture the Porsche creation. A trip 2 years later by Erwin and Oscar Allgaier discovered interest from Brazil's coffee and fruit plantations in a machine that could now mow down unwanted growth while not damaging their valuable plants. Gasoline rather than diesel was preferred for economic reasons. To test the requirement of the AP17 chassis, it was given a longer wheelbase and smaller front wheels. At the rear, its hydraulic system powered a rotary mower that trimmed a metre-wide path. Shaped around the machinery was a steel skirting designed to slip through plank road that would be left unmolested. So, sent to Sao Paulo in 1952, the prototype performed successfully but showed a need for more power. This was provided by a stroke increase from 108 to 116 millimeters, giving it a 1.8 cc. From the order of 1,000, the first 220 were made at Allgaier's Friedrichshafen factory and shipped to the port of Santos. Although the final P312 proved its merit on the plantations, the contracted importers' arrangements were so catastrophically inadequate that the first shipment to Brazil was also the last one. The small handful of survivors of these unusual tractors have since been showstoppers throughout the world. In the summer of 1952, the Agricultural Exhibition in Mannheim was the venue for the launch of the tiniest AP single-cylinder A111. It had a conventional tractor long wheelbase with the engine over the front wheels, leaving a central gap in which its farming equipment was fitted and deployed. The A111 and its 2-cylinder sister, the A122, had large flywheels to give running stability over difficult terrain instead of the hydraulic coupling previously favoured. Such couplings were optional on the A122 and standard on the 3-cylinder A133 and 4-cylinder A144. The proud top of the all-diesel AP range, while the other had transmission made by Allgaier. ZF supplied the gearbox for the 4,500-pound A144. Introduced at the 1953 Agricultural Exhibition in Cologne, it displaced 3,289 cc and produced 44 horsepower at 2,000 RPM. Most importantly, 127 pounds-foot of torque at 1,400 RPM. In 1955, the Allgaier family began to feel the stress of a growing business that was undercapitalised. Competition from Ferguson tractors in Britain was putting pressure on selling prices. At the same time, Porsche's business manager, Albert Preising, desired to maintain the benefits of the license and project fees that flowed to Porsche from tractor design and production. Thus, Preising was midwife to a new relationship with the industrial firm Mannesmann, which founded the Porsche diesel motorbau to take over all tractor production at the beginning of 1956. It moved the works to a newly equipped building in Friedrichshafen with an annual production potential of 16,000 tractors. Preising and a new company's managing director described new arrangements as having shares taken over by Mannesmann and the management entrusted to a team from Porsche. Flagship of the new Porsche diesel range was the four-cylinder P144, carried over from the Allgaier A144 in 1958. This evolved into the more powerful Master 408. Its new double clutch required a longer chassis and a wheelbase that did not aid agility. This handicap was overcome with the spring 1960 introduction of the Master 418, which had the new shorter ZF transmission, allowing a reduced wheelbase and giving an optional faster top speed. A powerful 2-ton machine, the Master 418 was capable of coping with the most severe demands of its day with the front and rear power takeoffs. The hydraulic clutch in this driveline aided manoeuvrability and flexibility, as did in some smaller models, which were carried over from the Allgaier operation. This allowed 9,465 tractors to be produced in the transition year of 1956. Names also came into use, with the smallest, the Junior, the Twin, the Standard, the Triple, the Super, and the Master at the top. With Karl Raab now devoting the bulk of its time to tractor development, Porsche brought the number of new ideas to the farming machine, such as infinitely variable transmission using belts or hydraulics. It also schemed more advanced diesel engines with valves in a V angle. Although many of the new ideas reached prototype status, none progressed to production in an increasingly cost-constrained environment. So Porsche tractor production finally ends. So competition from larger rivals and changes in the market demand led to closing of Porsche diesel in mid-1963 after some 120,000 tractors were produced. The creation of Porsche diesel Renault Sales GmbH in June 1963 provided a brief continuation, largely using existing components. Soon thereafter, the business was dissolved, with Renault carrying on the provision of the parts and service. It had not been an easy road for Volkstraktor from its first stirrings in 1937 to a plethora of prototypes produced in 1950 and finally closure in 1963. But it was part and parcel of the Porsche saga, bringing to life a family of tractors to the highest quality, and many are still treasured throughout the world. So that's it. So 1963, you could say you had the introduction, you had Fendt coming in, you had John Deere, you had Massey Ferguson, and obviously the cheaper line of tractors that we spoke about before. You had Zetor and that coming from Eastern Europe, and it was a very, very condensed market at the time. You had also bigger tractors that were being produced as well. Specialist manufacturers then taking the likes of your Fords, turning them into counties, large four-wheel drive tractors, and the writing was on the wall for Porsche pretty quickly, because they were a bespoke kind of tractor, a little bit specialised, and there was a little bit of people that were involved in it. Obviously, there was a little bit of history there, especially with their dealings in Brazil, which is another day's story that I could get into, but I won't. So yeah, that's it. That's the Porsche tractor. That's pretty much from start to finish. 120,000. How many of them are still left out there? Who knows? So that's it. Thanks for watching. If you've gotten to the end, fair play to you, because it's a long enough video. A difficult enough one to make, a difficult enough one to research. But look, we've done what we could. So look, thanks for watching, and I will see everybody very soon.